guys, Ron here, and over the last year I've answered questions like what are the most popular Pokemon characters, and also showcased what I thought were the characters with the best designs. But now it's time to count down what I think are the 20 best written Pokemon characters. The list is relatively rough since a character like AZ has a completely different story to offer than Guzma, but they all fall under a balance of the following criteria. They have some sort of character arc or ongoing story, so beloved characters like Nessa, Larry, and Cynthia are great. I like them more than some of the characters on the list, but they don't really go through any kind of development or get much fleshing out. But arcs aren't the most important either. After all, Silver has character development, but it's not written well. They have to be somewhat compelling, but in the end, some are more compelling with minimal or even incomplete arcs, while others on the list have perfect arcs, but aren't the most compelling. There is no exact science. This isn't a list of my favorite characters. I really like Steven and Marnie. They're not here, but I'm still human and my perspective differs from yours, so this is definitely biased, but I tried to be as objective as I could. Listen, we all understand that Pokemon characters aren't the best written when compared to other series, but for the sake of the video, I will be hyping them up, because they're the best the franchise has to offer, in terms of writing at least. Spoilers ahead. Number 20. Ghetsis. The shadow leader of Team Plasma and N's adoptive father. I think it was very compelling to have Ghetsis preach throughout Unova about Pokemon liberation and display him as this saint who reprimanded his grunts when they were abusing their power. His benevolent facade was all to spur N into pursuing truth or ideals, making him a truly righteous savior of Unova and Pokemon, also that Ghetsis can control the masses. While Ghetsis' heel turn undercuts the message of black and white, when he is clearly evil and not grey like N, it doesn't really make Ghetsis any less well written, considering all of his plans were coming together beautifully, and he was always the bad guy from the start. His motivations make sense, and the only thing that makes him this low on the list is how one-dimensional he truly is. He just wants to control. He's technically the most maniacal and irredeemable antagonist in Pokemon, truly an entertaining character with an ingenious plot, but he himself isn't all that deep. I was gonna say he's one of the few here without a character arc, but he actually becomes even more insane in Black and White too. Regression of character is technically an arc. Number 19. Sonia, the granddaughter and assistant of Professor Magnolia and Leon's childhood friend. Her ties to important characters make her super accessible and naturally implemented into the story. When she provides us with great lore about the region, it doesn't feel like exposition because she's a genuinely friendly person who is actually interested in researching the history of Galar. When she's showing us the way, Sonia throws in a quip about her journey as a trainer and her relationships with other important characters, and her eventual ascension into professor status makes total sense. Most of this development is off-screen, so she's relatively low on the list, but whenever she does show up, Sonia feels fun and three-dimensional. She's ditzy yet highly intelligent, mature yet youthful and full of potential. She believably displays a wide variety of emotions, so her personality reflects who's around her. She'll tell you about the stresses of her life, both before and after she's recognized as a professor. She isn't defined by her role, like rivals, champions, or professors. She's just being Sonia. Number 18. Professor Kukui, the researcher of Pokemon moves, founder of the Alola Pokemon League, and the Masked Royal. Probably the most fleshed out professor, let alone character in the franchise. We learn everything about him, his past, his goals, his friends, rivals, loved ones, hobbies, and of course, get to see his dream come true. He's an active part of so many aspects of the game, and is characterized as such a likable person, it's hard not to want to help him out. His arc is simple. He creates Alola's first Pokemon League, but it's literally one of the most believable arcs in Pokemon because the game puts so much effort into making him feel like a real person. Just like Sonia, he has a well-written network of connections with much of Alola's cast. That's what's so well written. It honestly heavily contrasts with the next entry. Number 17. AZ, the former king of Kalos and the creator of the ultimate weapon. This is the character with potentially the most impactful lore in the Pokemon world, but he doesn't really do anything during the plot. If he did, boy would he be in the top 5. But considering how well written his backstory and arc is, he's on the list. When war broke out 3,000 years ago, AZ's beloved Floette was forced to participate against AZ's wishes. Upon its death, the heartbroken AZ built a machine powered by the life energy of sacrificed Pokemon in order to resurrect his beloved Pokemon. He succeeded, but converted the machine into an ultimate weapon that destroyed both sides of the conflict and ended the war. But Floette was disgusted with AZ once it realized the origin of the weapon's power and left. Now AZ, immortal as a result of the infinity energy he absorbed, roams the earth in search of his Floette. That's powerful stuff. This story is well written and beautifully concludes once Floette returns to AZ. The reason is a bit contrived, but it's a famously touching moment nonetheless. A complete 180 from the next entries. Number 16. Charon and Bianca. Literally our rivals in Black and White with the plainest of goals, but unlike AZ, these two are some of the characters with the most screen time and development in Pokémon. This is helped with the fact that we get to see the results of their arcs in a sequel. Charon goes from an intellectual, rigid, and judgmental rival to a more driven yet gentle gym leader in Black and White 2, all thanks to the guidance of Alder and inspiration of the previous protagonist, while Bianca transforms from a flighty yet passionate friend to a diligent Pokémon research assistant in the sequels. Charon learns to find ideals and an actual reason for desiring to become strong, while Bianca learns the truth that not everyone is cut out to be a trainer, and that she would like to help the world through research. They both perfectly encapsulate the themes of the generation, while also visually taking a cue from each other as they age. Sure, their arc is the simplest so far, but it's very well written, and that's kind of the point of the video. Number 15. Wally. Once again, this entry juxtaposes the previous one. Wally is a rival whose development is mostly off-screen. Thanks to the protagonist, the sick and weak Wally is inspired to get stronger and eventually become the player's true rival. It's very straightforward, but is also an age-old character arc that is demonstrably compelling. I mean, look how popular Wally became after Oras handled his writing pretty well, especially with his visual updates and Mega Evolution highlighting Wally's growth even more spectacularly. Number 14. Penny. Cassiopeia and Team Star's big boss. This is a character that constantly puts up a facade with technology and sarcasm, so it's very easy to misunderstand her and therefore dismiss her compelling and relatable story. As a bullied shut-in, she desired friends, and using her computer skills, she organized Team Star to fight back against bullies, but secretly took the fall for them once a scandal broke out following Team Star's confrontation with their tormentors. But Team Star began to take things even further in Penny's absence, ditching class completely. She didn't want her friends to be expelled, so she set up Operation Starfall upon her return to bypass the strict code which stated that no member of Team Star had the right to order anyone around, and that the squad bosses had to step down once defeated in battle. It makes sense that Penny would set up such a code considering Team Star was meant to be a safe haven for those who wanted to be free of the authority that failed them. Her arc in which she reveals Team Star is truly her greatest treasure was touching to me. Penny's only lower on the list because the writers had a dumb decision to make her physically see you every time you hang up with Cassiopeia, thus making the mystery less mysterious. But in the end, there really is so much nuance to Penny, like how faithful her dialogue and hobbies are to those who are outcast. Number 13. Zinnia, the lore keeper of the Draconids. The character that expanded the perspective of mainline Pokemon and literally confirmed the Pokemon multiverse. The lore she keeps recontextualizes much of Hoenn's backstory and legends in a well-written way. Zinnia herself from childhood was tasked with stopping the impending meteoroid by summoning Rayquaza. Her crazy antics for the sake of saving our world and preventing the sacrifice of another parallel dimension is technically the grandest endeavor in the entire franchise, and her realization that you are actually the chosen one and not her was the icing on the cake. It's a bit exposition heavy and all condensed into the post-game, but I personally believe there's a reason Zinnia is so popular. She's very entertaining and a neat anti-hero. Number 12. Adaman and Irida, the young leaders of the Diamond and Pearl clan. Honestly, two of the chillest characters in Pokemon. I want to be friends with both of them. Seeing how each faces great responsibility as the new leader of an ancient clan is captivating. I would have wanted to see more serious struggles between them, so the challenge of bringing both clans together would seem more difficult, but it makes sense for their shared ideals and circumstances to actually be quite compatible. Their dynamic is fun. Them noticing various quirks of each other only makes me want to ship them even more. They check all three boxes. They're likable, have believable motivations, backstories, and relationships with many other characters, and go on a region-defining arc as they learn to cooperate with each other. Number 11. Ingo, leader of the Battle Subway alongside his twin brother Emmett and warden of the Diamond Clan. We've had other followers in Pokemon, and Annabelle is definitely underrated for sharing a similar backstory, but the context of Ingo in Legends Arceus makes him the Pokemon character with the biggest potential. It was a genius writing move to have Ingo appear in Hisui, considering we know that means he has left behind Emmett. Separating these two changes everything we know about Ingo. I remember when he was first revealed, I felt instant camaraderie with a character I originally felt nothing for. When you're trapped in a desolate and dangerous past, it is so comforting to see a familiar face from the future. But even if I somehow never recognized Ingo, the fact that he is visibly worn down and has totally forgotten about his past connections, yet still yearns for the companionship of his twin brother and former team is heartbreaking. It sucks that he didn't really get much closure and wasn't utilized in the plot, but whenever he was on screen, Ingo was one of the most enthralling characters in all of Pokemon. Number 10. AI Sada and Turo. We didn't get much of these robotic clones of the professors, but from the moment we met them in person to their tear-jerking departure, AI Turo and Sada provided us with one of the best stories in the franchise. In most science fiction tales, the rogue AI is usually the one to inadvertently cause harm for the sake of logic. But in this story, AI Turo and Sada actually come to the conclusion that the late professor was the one harming humanity with their twisted logic, and did everything they physically could to stop the destruction of Paldea. Their words to Arvin are some of the most emotional in the series, and their sacrifice by trapping themselves in the past or future in order to defeat the Paradise Protection Protocol was a fantastic ending to this short-lived character. They only didn't make the top 5 because they weren't as involved as the rest of my top 10, and I gotta give props to the music and animation too. Number 9. Guzma, the leader of Team Skull. As a failed trial captain who has learned to despise the customs of Alola, the bitter Guzma created a group of rejects who rebel against the antiquated ways of the island. It becomes very clear that Guzma craves acknowledgement, especially of his battle prowess, so once Lusamine finally gave Guzma the affirmation that he needed, Guzma became her muscle. However, after being scared straight in Ultra Space, he decides to turn over a new leaf, and in Ultra Sun and Moon even helps us defeat the previous antagonists. Guzma is one of the most popular characters in Pokemon for his personality and presence, but people often forget that he has a lot of depth that can be ascertained by both mandatory and optional dialogue. He might not make you cry, and he technically doesn't do anything of circumstance in Sun and Moon, but he still is fully fleshed out and vibrant. Number 8. Volo, the Ginkgo Guild merchant and wielder of Giratina. This man appears throughout the game and helps you achieve your goals, all for it to be part of his plan to strike Arceus down to this earth. He's the reason you're even in the past. This revelation is mind-blowing, a contender for the best twist in the Pokemon series. A man dealing with hardships throughout his entire life, he became obsessed with meeting the creator of this cruel world after discovering the lore of Sinnoh during his Hisuian travels as a merchant. Perhaps he was even seduced into a partnership with Giratina in his vulnerable state. There's much to speculate about. Even him giving up at the end would be the reaction of a man who truly does not care anymore, simply vowing to discover all of Hisui's secrets and passing it on for generations. It's a relatively lazy ending to his arc, but it ties everything to Cynthia quite well. Number 7. Hop, your rival and the brother of Champion Leon. This is a controversial one, but despite how annoying Hop may come across to some in battle, when it comes to the actual character arc of Hop, he has one of the best among the truly friendly rivals in the series. It's clear from the beginning that he idolizes his big brother, which gives him great motivation to become stronger and want you to test his strength. But as it becomes clear over many defeats, he may not be able to live up to Leon's shadow. He begins to lose himself, even swapping team members as a last-ditch effort. But after Hop's assistance fighting Eternatus, Leon's defeat, and the events of the postgame, Hop realizes he wants to help Pokemon as a professor and begins to study under Sonia. It's a more fleshed out version of what Game Freak did with other rivals, and in my opinion, it was the most successful. Number 6. Hugh, your rival in Black and White 2. This one's even more controversial, and I don't know why. When I think of Hugh, I think of a boy whose late grandpa gifted his sister a Purloin, whom she loved, but was kidnapped and indoctrinated by Team Plasma. He wants to find his sister's Pokemon and take down Team Plasma to do it. He isn't a wrathful person in general, but is blinded by vengeance. His rage is incredibly justifiable. He implores you to get stronger in order to constantly challenge him so he can get strong enough to complete his mission. And what makes Hugh so deep, in my opinion, is that he goes through an arc learning that despite the hatred he holds, some of the former Team Plasma members have always had good intentions and are trying to reform, learning about the true nature of Pokeballs in the process. He exemplifies and wraps up the entire theme of Unova, that it's not always black and white. Hugh is the gray. Literally the only rival that straddles the line between friendly and cool. He isn't a pushover, but he isn't too smug. You'd think he'd be a popular rival for all these reasons, but many fans simply dilute his character to a guy angry about a cat. It's honestly shameful. Probably my hottest take here. Number 5. Gladion, Team Skull Enforcer. Before the events of Sun and Moon, Gladion noticed his mother's growing obsession with Ultra Beasts after the disappearance of her husband and escaped the Aether Foundation along with the Beast Killer Type Null. In order to free Type Null from its shackles, he became a Team Skull Enforcer, giving him ample opportunities to battle and strengthen his silver ally, honing their skills so that they can take down Lusamine. Upon meeting the player, he acknowledges your power, and when his sister gets captured, he decides to trust in your aid to free her. He helps you defeat his mother, becomes acting president of the Aether Foundation, and finally frees Type Null from his helmet. Gladion is a wonderful rival, with fantastical yet believable goals that directly tie into the main plot. He competently completes his mission and gives you some great battles along the way. His dynamic between Hau is also super entertaining. Definitely in my top 5 most well-written Pokemon characters. I mean, literally. Number 4. Lusamine, the president of the Aether Foundation. Devoted to loving and protecting all Pokemon, no matter where they come from, she's established as the ultimate mother. We learn that she has taken this to the extreme, preserving Pokemon in suspended animation so they can be forever protected. You see, Lusamine's husband vanished some years ago while researching Ultra Wormholes, and she became obsessed with Ultra Beasts in the process of searching for him, becoming the host to Nihilego in the process, a parasite that unleashes Lusamine's inhibitions, causing her to go mad. Her sanity was further compromised by the betrayal of both her children. In the events of Sun and Moon, she wishes to stay in Ultra Space with the beasts that did not forsake her, ultimately fusing with one and attacking her daughter, who valiantly saves Lusamine's soul and takes it upon herself to help her mother recover. Number 3. Arven, the son of Professor Sadanturo. From the beginning of the game, Arven is established as a guy with connections to the legendaries and professors. Once he invited us to join his search for the Herba Mystica, I think we all assumed this was just a guy who likes making sandwiches. In reality, this boy, nay, this man, was in search for a way to revive the health of his best friend who was injured in Area Zero. His culinary skills are a result of being abandoned by his parents, and he's been skipping class to search for the Herba Mystica. He lashes out at Koraidon or Miraidon for taking his parents away from him, but slowly begins to trust the legendaries as his truly kind nature comes out. Every preconceived notion about Arven is shattered with legitimate motivations. He's traumatized by his parents' behavior and the events in Area Zero, so it was admittedly pretty brave for him to reluctantly return in order to help out his supposed parents and friends, only for Turo and Sada to be dead and replaced with an AI. Throughout his arc, Arven easily became one of the most likable characters in the series, as his personality and compassion shine through. Number 2. Lily, the de facto protagonist of Sun and Moon, which is where her story was written pretty perfectly. Some people don't like to admit that she's a well-written character because she handholds you throughout the game, but many of her cutscenes reveal motivations and allude to her backstory, like how her desire to shop is literally because her mother would dress her up, so when she finally gets her own clothes, this visually indicates a change in her self-confidence. She sets off the entire story by stealing Nebby, befriending it, and actively seeks out a way to return Cosmog's strength when it is stolen by her mother. And during the climax, she is the one to order Nebby to protect us from Lusamine's final attack, all while still trying to save her mother. In Sun and Moon, the story begins and ends with her. You can fill an entire video with reasons for her well-executed arc, but there is still one more character that reigns supreme. Number 1. N. Natural Harmonia Gropius, the puppet leader and king of Team Plasma, was set up from the beginning as the most notable Pokemon character. Literally crowned in the opening cutscene, this orphan raised by Pokemon was manipulated by his adoptive father, Ghetsis, to rule Unova with a just heart. The best antagonist in the series is one that genuinely believes he is doing unparalleled good. N is indoctrinated into the belief that Pokemon truly need to be set free in an ideal world. He embodies both extremes, and must learn that the relationship between humans and Pokemon is not black and white. Throughout the story, the amicable N, a friend to Pokemon, encounters the protagonist and challenges the status quo. He subverts so many expectations of what it means to be a rival, antagonist, and even champion. What's the most well-written aspect is that, unlike Lily, N doesn't need to hijack the story for him to be fully fleshed out. You are still the hero. He is an anti-villain, the dark protagonist with a savior complex. Once he is defeated, he roams the earth in search of truth and ideals. He returns in Black and White 2 to save Kyurem, and eventually completes his arc accepting different ideas and wanting to thank those who helped him find the way. Honestly, the only method to fully understand how good of a Pokemon character N is by playing through the Gen 5 games. And if you thought this video was good, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. Perhaps check out the other Pokemon character related videos I've made. Check out my Patreon or press the join button to get cool rewards like a discount on my merch, my Patreon Discord, and early access to my videos. Follow me on Twitter where I talk about all my opinions and show tons of behind the scenes on my videos. I'll see you guys very soon.